continuing with the book here, chapter 9. Chapter 9. So chapter 9 is kind of the chapter that kind of explains everything. You know, it's what we've seen so far. Oh, and this list, if you guys couldn't tell, this was my study guide that's been kind of helpful. But I kind of thought just quick little descriptions of the people, kind of like something like that, but a little more hearty, and so that's there. So we have chapter 9. You know, all the certain solid people have been going to certain ghosts, and we see C.S. Lewis, our protagonist, has been seeing all these different conversations, and now we get to see the conversation that he gets to have. And as I was kind of reading this again for today, it really struck me at how introspective C.S. Lewis is being here. He's really, in the book, he's also, I think he's seeing himself, that he's a theologian, that he's someone that cares about the faith, cares about things like that. And he's, I think, at least in this, is trying to really attempt at looking at his own demons type of thing, you know. And I kind of saw that, especially we're kind of in the middle. So let's see, what were the really big parts coming up here? We see that he's kind of introducing this idea of how he's kind of defining purgatory here, where if someone is in the gray town, if they're in hell and then come out, then hell was just purgatory to them. But if they never come out, then it's always been hell. And so that's kind of a interesting thing. And then he kind of explains what this is that's going on, that the people who have a certain disposition, it seems, a certain, I think this is closer to the end of the book, but a certain person that may be able to come out of an obsession of their own selves will find their way to the bus and get on it. Let's see. Did anyone else want to summarize anything we talked about last time?
Well, I think you got to the point, I believe, where you were talking about, you know, where he, as you mentioned, that, you know, if you came to heaven and you stayed, then everything before becomes heaven as well too.
Yeah.
And the look back on that reminded me of something that's kind of off the track, but the question of, can the people that have gone before us see us, know what's going on, that sort of thing. I always went with what a friend of mine said, that she assumed that, since I think it's in Revelation, they say there's no mourning, there's no crying, you know, there's joy, basically just joy. So if they could see us, they wouldn't be joyful, you know. I mean, you know, you know, if they could see what was going on. But with this, it gave me the question of possibility of perhaps they can, but from their perspective and knowing what they know now, it's kind of like a small child falls or hurts or something happens and they think it's the end of the world and they think it's this horrible thing. But as an adult looking from our vantage point, we know it's minor, it's just a moment in time. What's coming forward will be fine, you know, so that maybe they can see us, but they just know that this is a place and a moment in time, and maybe it's not. I don't know. Yeah, that's where my mind went.
Well, and you saying that brings me back to the idea of growing up. brings me back to the idea of just like you said, like when you look at a child, as you get older, your ideas about things, they grow a little bit more complex where, like you're very black and white when you're a kid. When you don't get the piece of candy, like it's end of the world, type of thing. And I think the way C.S. Lewis is describing what I would call growing up, he never calls it that here, but it's just what I would call, is becoming more solid, And so I liked how you looked back at how they're like, oh yeah, it's like these children and all that stuff. I liked how you kind of went back there, and I think he's kind of doing that as he's talking about kind of getting more solid. I don't know if that makes sense as he's traveling towards the mountains and getting more solid as you go. I don't know. Did anyone else have anything that they'd like to?
I think Carol's right, because if you were in heaven, why would you be feeling the pain or what took place before?
Well, or even seeing what,
Yeah,
what's happening on Earth.
yeah, yeah, then it mitigates it.
Right.
That, you can't bring hell into heaven.
Yeah,
That he specifically stated that you can't bring it in.
But you also, if you have become more solid, looking back at whatever your earthly life was, didn't they say it becomes heaven? And I guess I also saw that as sometimes some people will look and they get stuck on something that's happened and how horrible it is. And it's like a lot of the characters in this book, they get caught in time. Whereas to me, the book keeps saying, you've got to let it go and just focus on the Lord, and you can't get stuck there. Yes, things happen, and yes, it does, or you do things, we are sinners, we do things, but as long as we don't stay there, then
you move on.
yeah. And I think, so going back to what you said, when we look back at the guy, the one that affects me is the murderer, and how he talks about himself. He goes, yeah, I murdered him. Like it was just a matter of fact. There wasn't any shame. Like that was speaking to someone that is living in like complete forgiveness, which is a place that's hard for us to get to.
Yeah.
Like that's at least that's how.
I don't think you can get.
Yeah, like that. That's where you just live in this world of complete forgiveness. That's kind of,
I kept looking for a confession and remorse
yeah,
from the murderer. I never.
yeah.
Well,
and-
he had to have gotten through that, I think,
Yeah.
at some point to get where he is.
Yeah.
He no longer has to sit there and go, I was so horrible, I was so horrible, I was so horrible.
Or justify the act.
Yeah, or justify.
yeah, or
it,
justify it. Yeah, like that's like you can tell he's already gotten through that,
Yeah.
and he's on the other side, which is wild. So right before where we end, we started talking about this idea of reigning in hell and serving in heaven. So yeah, I kind of want to hit that again of what that means. So right before that, let's see, it's page 70. I think everyone has kind of the same beginning of a paragraph that says, hush, he said sternly, do not blaspheme. Hell is a state of mind. He never said a truer word, and every state of mind left to itself, every shutting up of the creature within the dungeon of its own mind is in that end hell. But heaven is not a state of mind. Heaven is reality itself. All that is fully real is heavenly. For all that can be shaken will be shaken, and only the unshakable remains. Now, I don't remember the last time you guys read this, but I just read this before I came here today while the guy was working on the AC unit. But that right there, heaven is fully real, and for all that can be shaken, and only the unshakable remains. I think he's talking about that poet, not the poet, the artist. We're about to encounter an artist coming up. and he's coming back to that same idea of why are you painting? Why are you doing what you're doing? Yeah, like that's the why. Is this now just what you do? You know, are you not seeing? And before we go, and so and then he continues on going into this idea that it's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. That a lot of people think that way. Well, I think C.S. Lewis is giving us pause. He's letting us think about earthly and heavenly things, but I think he's I think he's showing us what it means to live hell on earth, you know, now that will shut ourselves into these ideas and or we can't get out.
Well, almost every one of these people has gotten stuck in their job, you know, or, you know, such as the artist or,
Mhm.
you know, they have become so narrow-minded onto the wrong things, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you know what I was stuck in that this book helped me with? My grieving.
Grieving. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so stuck on honoring and, you know, but I thought, well, okay, nobody comes to my house. Who's gonna see all this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like I'm taking a video or anything like that. I know it's for me, so I
Yeah.
moved it from the great room into my bedroom.
Yeah.
That-
Because you can't.
Yeah,
For right now, it's like stages.
oh, yeah,
This
It
pointed
is.
out how focused on that I was.
Yeah.
With what I was doing.
that's great.
So like kind of got, I don't really like calling it a rut, but that's kind of the only word I can think of right now. We kind of get into
Mhm.
a thing where it's like, oh, this is, and it kind of becomes our identity.
Yeah.
You know, that's, and so that's, and I think that reign in hell and I think that's, he goes and he starts talking about lust and I think kind of self-pleasure stuff. So this is page 72, but it's connected to that idea of that better to reign in hell. And it's the beginning of the paragraph. It says, "Some are, no doubt, the sensualists. I'll allow you begins by pursuing real pleasure, though a small one. His sin is less, but the time comes on when, though the pleasure becomes less and less, and the craving fiercer and fiercer, though he knows that joy can never come that way, yet he prefers to joy more in the fondling of an unpleasurable lust and would not have it taken from him. He'd fight to the death to keep it. He'd like well to be able to scratch, but even when he can't scratch no more, he'd rather itch than not." And that idea of the having the itch rather than not being there, like there's a lot of times I'd just rather be angry at something than to give it up.
Mhm.
You know, I'd rather
Hmm.
be because it allows me to rule over and it gives license to me being angry. It gives license. It lets me reign.
Don't you find anger gets you into an obsession though?
Well, yeah, and I think but I think we can look at, and anger is just one thing. He was using like a self-lust idea here to talk about that. I'm using it to talk about anger. I think what you just talked about with your grieving is kind of a similar idea, you know, where it's like, I'd rather have this than let go, because it feels like that we can reign in some way, that we can control in some way. I don't know, does that make sense what I'm saying? And that's the hard thing. And I think like that's when I read this again, I was like, gosh, that's what he's talking about. Like he is like, I'd rather control all of this. And I'd rather have the itch than to not. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. He continues describing this as he talks about the philosophical guy. Let's see, it's kind of the middle of that next paragraph. A traveling to digging out queer stories among Tibetan lamas and being initiated into the brotherhoods of Central Africa, like all this stuff. Like the dude was curious, and then it became about the proofs and the more proofs and the more proofs again, where he wanted, and it drove him mad if he ever saw anyone taking an interest in anything else. So that thing had become so, it became who he was, you know, and it almost, it drove him mad because he was living in a hell. He's living in a hell. Let's see, and then kind of going down a little bit more, but do you think that did him any good? This country was no use to him at all, for everyone here had survived already.
I
Like,
love that. That's where baptism came out.
yeah, like that's,
He wasn't needed.
yeah,
His work wasn't needed.
yeah, his work wasn't needed.
But this also resonates for so many of the other characters that we've encountered. That sentence that says this country was no use to him at all.
Yeah.
They've all just been so unsatisfied with what is around them. They're fretful. They just can't rest.
They can't relinquish control.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so everyone here had survived already. Nobody took the least interest in the question. There was nothing more to prove. His occupation was clean gone. Of course, if he would only have admitted that, he had mistaken the means for the end and had a good laugh at himself. And he could have begun all over again like a little child and entered into joy.
Mhm.
But he would not do that. He cared nothing about joy. In the end, he went away. Like that's like I love that sense of he could have just laughed at himself. Like that's like, quit taking yourself so seriously, you know, like and all this stuff. He could have just laughed at himself and been like a child and entered joy and kind of discovered all these things again, rather than having to prove everything.
Isn't it also that a lot of people have a concept of what heaven is going to be like?
Yeah.
I can remember a sermon that Pastor Jean had given, and somebody said something about, well, are there going to be golf courses in heaven? You know,
Yeah.
because that's what I want to do.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I tend to view heaven as much more similar to here than dissimilar. Like but that's just me. Like but we're still doing that trip to the mountains, as C.S. Lewis puts it. Yeah, I still say, I don't. That's just my understanding, because everything comes back in Revelation. Everything
So
comes
heaven
back.
will be your best day ever on steroids, so to speak. Is that what
Well,
you-
like I think it's
I think the important things will matter.
yeah.
It's not,
But. it's-
and not
it's-
all
but what-
important.
but you're right,
yeah,
that's
not
the
all
thing,
important,
what
not our
important thing.
concept of,
Yeah,
not our concept of importance,
Mhm.
yeah,
but rather the real importance.
right.
Yeah. I wrote a note next to that guy that says that everyone had survived already, is that he was teachable again, that he had gotten to this place where you couldn't learn anymore, basically, and that
He had the answer was there,
yeah, there it is already.
right?
And I think going back to a child and like being able to see experiments for the first time, like, oh my goodness, like that,
Yeah.
that's, and so, yeah. Let's see all right, I'm gonna read the next paragraph here. So how fantastic, said I. Do you think so, said the teacher with a piercing glance. It's nearer to such than you think. there have been men before now who got so interested in proving the existence of God that they came to care nothing for God himself. Like, see, this is aimed directly at C.S. Lewis right here. He got so interested in and this has caused me to think for the last 3 weeks. I've been sitting on this. So interested in proving the existence of God, that they came to care nothing for God himself, as if the good Lord had nothing to do but exist. There have been some who were so occupied in spreading Christianity that they never gave a thought to Christ. We're going to get back to that. We're going to see what you guys think of that. Man, you see it in smaller matters. Did you ever know a lover of books that with all his first editions and signed copies had lost the power to read them? Or an organizer of charities that had lost all love for the poor? Is the subtlest of all the snares. Like that's like this it's like, I can shine a light, it's in my thing, it's like, are we just running a well-run church? Like that's.
I think we always have to continually question ourselves as we go along and make sure we haven't. Why are we doing this? Are we doing it just because we've always done it? Are we doing it out of love? Are we doing it out of compassion? Or are we just doing it?
Like this is an idea that really hit me hard a while ago. And it really made me think of, let's see, how do I, like we were kind of talking about it already a little bit today, where I think a lot of times the goal of Christianity and the way it's presented is to get to heaven. I don't think that's the goal. And I think that's what he's attacking here. Like that's like that. And you think about how we've sold Christianity for the last 150 years. It has been this like hell insurance. And that kind of, I was reading a couple of reviews about The Great Divorce, and there's this one on Amazon. The guy was not a fan. But as I was reading his review, it really struck me at how much he desired to protect hell.
Yeah.
Like that's a weird, I don't think he would ever say that, but he really, like, just every little thing was like, we got to make sure we know what hell is, and we got to make, and I was just like, gosh, you're protecting this idea. And it made me think of like the previous people when they, or at the end of this chapter, when they're like, these teachers want to give lessons and we're going to books to the people in heaven about what hell is. and I was just, I was like, man, did you read this book, buddy? Like, and that's like, because he's like, we need, he goes, we need to understand that it's conscious torment constantly. And I was just like, I don't like, I think you missed it, but that's just me that thinking that of him. But I think oftentimes that we treat church things and Christianity as like, well, as long as I do my due diligence, I'll get little blessings from God and I'll get the good things in the end. And I think this book is pushing our horizons, because that's very small. Like you think about, we've got the 100 years here or whatever, that's over there, and you think of all eternity, and it's like, well, I just crammed for this test. And I think that's such a small outlook, and I think it's getting rid of that subtle snare that we may all fall into, where it's like we started doing something for righteous reasons, but then that thing become the ultimate.
One of the things when I was Sunday school teacher,
Yeah,
that when we talked with the pastor about, what we did, we had like monthly meetings with the pastor about what's going on with our groups
mhm,
and different ways of presenting things and questions and whatever. And one of the things that we talked about was not impressing upon them so much that everything you do is going to get you to heaven,
yeah,
or things that you don't do will mean you're not going to heaven. He said, and I truly believe that what we do should be giving glory to our Creator.
mhm,
To give glory to God is the purpose behind what we do. And as long as we keep that in mind, and if in fact at the end heaven is there, as we learn more it is, then great, but that shouldn't be the end goal.
yeah.
And that's kind of what they told us. And
Yeah.
That was.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good.
I think it's about identity in some ways with regard to getting caught up in doing the action and not the one in whom, like Cheryl said, the creator. If our identity is not in Christ, or if we're having trouble remembering that all glory goes back to him through these actions, I think that's where we just start spinning our wheels with saying, well, no, I'm a sorority member and our organization does this activity, or, you get caught up in good actions, but if you're forgetting where your identity first and foremost is, I think that's where we start to trail off, and those good things are really to our detriment in the end.
Mhm.
But I do also think back to how the disciples got upset and then Jesus got on to them because people were using Jesus's name, but they weren't really part of the 12. And the disciples got mad that the other people were doing healings and things and preaching. And Jesus said, well, if they're not against us, they're for us. And so I think that if we feel convicted by this paragraph or two, I don't think we should let it harm our ministry by fretting and worrying over, oh, it's my identity. Am I doing this for the right reason? Am I doing this for the right reason? If we do that, we're going to go mad too.
Yeah.
But instead, it just seems like these spirits have been trying to convince these people, these ghosts, just rest in it. Just, forgive, repent, accept, be here instead of focusing on doing things.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good. I don't think C.S. Lewis wants you just to stop. He just wants you to stop. You continue helping the poor to help the poor. To use his own analogy there. Yeah, like that's kind of, I think he's over there. We then start moving into.
Before you go,
Yeah, yeah.
the line there have been some who were so occupied in spreading Christianity that they never gave a thought to Christ.
Yeah.
When I read that line, two thoughts came to my mind: the Inquisition
Okay.
and the Holy Wars.
The Holy War. Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, if you read your history, that was brutal. How could you be thinking of Christ
Yeah.
and doing that at the same time?
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, and
Murder
they
is God's name.
quoted the Inquisition a
Yeah,
couple
it
chapters
was
ago.
brought up,
Yeah. They quoted the Inquisition, and you look around. I mean, you look around through time, and we struggle with this to this day, where I'll call it Christianity becomes a voting block, and that's and then that's kind of all it becomes. And I think when you look at Inquisition or the Crusades or any of that stuff, it's that same idea, where it's like, well, this is our culture, and we need to make sure we retain power. And that's one thing when we did that Mark Bible study, like I basically ripped that off because that was I really enjoyed going through Mark, and so that's going to be our sermon series in the spring and the winter, but up through Easter this next year. But like, what I really saw, I'm like, Mark is really pushing against this idea of wanting power, or as C.S. Lewis, I think, is putting it, better to reign in hell. And he's really pushing against that. Like, this is not what it's about, guys. It's about taking up your cross and serving all these people. That's wild. That's wild. Yeah, that's good. Like, Chris, it never gave a thought to Christ, and that's easy. It's easy to do. So the very next page I says, but what about those poor ghosts who never get into the omnibus at all? Everyone who wishes it does. Never fear. There are only two kinds of people in the end: those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and to those whom God says in the end, "Thy will be done." All that are in hell choose it. Without the self-choice, there could be no hell. He's making a pretty strong argument right there. No soul that seriously and consistently desires joy will ever miss it. Those who seek find, and those who knock, it is open. He starts quoting Jesus there. So I think, and you can see that what he's doing again right there is really like pushing us to knock and to seek and to not just declare as found, like just to continue seeking to continue to be teachable. And that's what I really liked about that. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's constantly moving. I know we're about to move into our next character. It's the let's see, who is she? The grumbling ghost. The grumbling ghost. So the grumbling ghost is very interesting. So apparently she was murdered, and we'll read just a little bit of her, but there was one word that this last time when I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, this is interesting. So see, I'll just kind of pick up in the middle of what she's talking here. I've tried living with her when I first came, and it was all fixed up. She was to do the cooking, and I was to look after the house. I did think I was going to be comfortable after all I've been through, but she turned out to be so changed, absolutely selfish, did not participate in sympathy for anyone but herself. And I once said to her, I don't think I'm entitled to a little consideration, because at least you lived at your time, but I ought to, like, and I started underlining all the time she was saying I. Like that's like I was
Yeah,
like that. And I think we're starting to see, he just gave us a bunch of law and what we just went up, like a bunch of law. And then I think he's showing us how that plays out. And what we're really interested in is these eyes. And he's showing us do this kind of funny thing where this woman is just like, well, I couldn't believe this happened. I did this and I did that, and they did this to me, and all these grumblings and all of that. And it kind of ends on the middle of 77. The paragraph kind of begins like this: that is what she once was. That is maybe what she still is. If so, she certainly will be cured. But the whole question is whether she is now a grumbler. And that goes back to everything we've been talking about, where it's like, yeah, she's fallen completely into that. And then continue on into the hope. I should have thought there would be no doubt about that. But ye misunderstand me. The question is whether she is a grumbler or only a grumble. If there is a real woman, even a trace of one, still there inside the grumbling, it can be brought to life again. If there is one wee spark under all those ashes, we'll blow it till the whole pile is red and clear. But if there's nothing but ashes, we'll not go on blowing them in our own eyes forever. They must be swept up. And I love, like, there's just a little bit there. There's a lot of hope. Like, even if there's just a little bit, it's almost like the way I put it is that they won't be forgotten. They won't be forgotten. And that's I really enjoyed that. If anyone wants to say anything, just interrupt me. So we continue going, so we're talking about the grumbler. The whole difficulty of understanding hell is that the thing to be understood is so nearly nothing, but you'll have had an experience. It begins with a grumbling mood and yourself still indistinct from it, perhaps criticizing it, and yourself in a dark hour may will that mood embrace it. You can repeat and come, you can repent, you can repent and come out of it again, but there may come a day when you can do that no longer. There will be none of you left to criticize the mood nor even to enjoy it, but to grumble itself going on forever like a machine. But come, you are here to watch and listen. Lean on my arm and we will go for a walk. I saw something on Reddit this week. I gotta find it real quick. You guys ever heard of Reddit before? Oh man, how do I find stuff? Saved. All right, so this post. You can kind of see it from a distance, but see it's a door with like a bunch of stuff written on it, and the post says, "Crazy neighbor has a list of people who are not welcome on his front door." And that's
Oh my
that's-
God.
and so it's a bunch of names, but there's also like names like Paula Abdul is not allowed. Like people are going through all these things, but like I saw this, kind of after I was during this last week, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a physical embodiment of the grumble, like where it's gone full in, and where he has this, like, if your name's on the list, like don't come, like that's
Bad.
yeah. So but yeah, so he's asking him to lean on his arm to know, and that's an interesting imagery there. I think the idea of the leaning on him, where it's so easy to lean into that grumble, so easy to lean into that thing that we has started becoming who we are. Yeah, like that. And he kind of says, lean on me. Let's see here.
He also said the experience carried him back to childhood, where the page before said, or 2 pages before, you have to become like a child.
Yeah.
And then he said he found the going tolerable, where before everything was painful.
Yeah.
Now suddenly it's tolerable.
Yeah.
So he is advancing.
Yeah.
His feet were growing more solid.
Yeah.
And is this where it says that he wasn't sure? Yeah, this is like, I owe this the strong arm of the teacher, like that's
Yeah.
like that.
Humility right there. Yeah. I was thinking of that part, and what came to my mind was Peter walking on the water for a second. Like that, when I first read that, that's what I thought of, because he was thinking he was doing it on his own, and then came to the realization that it was through the Spirit that he was able to.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, so he's starting to kind of feel that thing, kind of like Peter walking on the water, like it's not till he looked at the grumbling, the winds and the waves and all of that stuff, that he began to sink again. And that's a good catch. I wonder if C.S. Lewis was kind of thinking that there. He keeps throwing these ideas in and not directly quoting any of them. So that's then we have this female ghost. Her trouble was the very opposite of that which afflicted the other, a lady frightened by the unicorns. This one seemed quite unaware of her phantasmal appearance, and so she's like gyrating her body and things like that. The incredible, as it seemed, that she supposed herself still capable of attracting them, and was trying to do so. And so we kind of see another like reign of this is like, again, she's still trying to reign in hell here. You know, like, so that's always been how she's been able to get what she wants. And she kind of, at the end, she muttered "stupid creatures" and turned back to the bus. And then I have this underlined. This put me in my mind to ask my teacher what he thought about the affair with the unicorns. It will maybe have succeeded, he said. You have to be divine that he meant to frighten her, not that fear itself could make her less a ghost, but if it took her mind a moment off herself, there might in that moment be a chance. I have seen them saved so. I think we talked about that a little last week, but that's kind of a wild thing. It's like just that idea that, yeah, I think that's when we see like a tragedy will hit someone, and it brings them out of there.
Or kind of the opposite.
Or the
in
opposite,
that
yeah.
if something has happened or grieving, and if you take the time to focus on somebody else, on something else
Mm,
besides yourself, you're able to move on another step.
yeah. And so that's good.
Bottom line, get it off yourself.
Get it off yourself, right? Let's see here. Then we said we met several ghosts that had come so near to heaven only in order to tell the celestials about hell. And I love, we kind of talked about that a little bit ago. But let's see, we'll keep on reading some of that. They had notebooks full of statistics, maps, you know, one of them, magic lantern. Some wanted to tell anecdotes of the notorious sinners of all ages who they had met below, but the most part seemed to think that the mere fact of having contrived for themselves so much misery gave them a kind of superiority. What do you guys think of that?
That reminds me of a serial killer.
A serial killer?
They're just doing it and doing it and doing it and thinking,
Yeah. Well, I mean, is that connected to like the phrase that when you're talking to someone and they'll just, well, back in my day, you know, like, then that's becomes all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of my friends that are pastors. So we have these circuit meetings we go to, and there seems to be like two kind of classes of circuit meetings. You have the ones that are ruled by the retired guys and the ones that aren't. And the ones that aren't are helpful.
old school and new school.
Well, no, it's not old school. No, it's just the retired guys. All they want to do is live their previous glory.
Set in their ways.
Set in their ways, and their only advice they give the young guys is like, well, we did it this way. You should do it the same exact way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it needs to be somewhere in between where they can say, this is what
Yeah.
we did, what happened.
Mhm.
But
There's
you
no
need to take that and make it your own.
yeah. There's no wisdom in it. It's all like this
Tradition.
is what we did. Like there's just no and we have a pretty good circuit here. We have some retired guys in it, but for the most part, they want to help.
Well, don't you think it's what they're comfortable with and they don't want to get out of that comfort zone?
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's and that has been eye-opening to me. That I'm just like, oh man, you know, like how can I be better when I'm retired?
He's
You may have-
preparing
you
for
may have to
retirement
give
already.
up the,
Yeah.
no, I may be wrong, but.
Yeah, I may be wrong. Yeah.
That was good.
Maybe. We'll see, Carol. We'll see.
You made it all right. Where have I heard that before?
Yeah. That's funny. They, but
The comment, you have led a sheltered life.
yeah,
I think back to conversations that you have with people. Oh, well, you know, everything worked well for you. You
mm,
don't understand.
yeah.
You can't comprehend.
And that also takes me back in the story, back to the Tocqueville poet who committed suicide. You know, he committed suicide, and then, but everything was something else's fault.
Yeah, I did everything right.
Yeah, like this was a setup against me. This was set up, like, you know, all these things, and kind of like so that kind of that you led a sheltered life is kind of that. It's easy to make an excuse, and it is.
Yeah, but you can have the same two people go through the same thing practically, and their response is different. One can get very stuck and one can, you know, be there, but then move on and
Move on.
move on.
Yeah, move on. Yeah. Let's see here. Why did I have this underlined? All alike so far as I could judge, it's right in the middle of the paragraph. All alike so far as I could judge from my own exploration of the lower world were wholly unreliable and all equally incurious about the country in which they had arrived. That was, again, the curiousness. And I kind of think that's how C.S. Lewis is defining what it means to enter the kingdom of God like a child, like still being curious. Yeah, like that's I think that's how he's defining it. And I like that definition of still being curious over there. All right, so the next paragraph down. This curious wish to describe hell turned out, however, to be only the mildest form of desire, very common amongst the ghosts. The desire to extend hell, to bring it bodily, if they could, into heaven. There were tub-thumping ghosts who, in thin, bat-like voices, urged the blessed spirits to shake off their fetters, to escape from their imprisonment and happiness, to tear down the mountains with their hands, to seize heaven for their own. Hell offered their cooperation. Their planning ghosts who implored them to dam the rivers, cut down the trees, kill the animals, build a mountain railway, smooth the horrible grasses and moss, and healthier with asphalt, with heather and with asphalt. Yeah, like that's, I don't know, like all of a sudden they want to make heaven look like the gray town. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys have any thoughts?
Some people that are miserable want you to be miserable too.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot like our country right now.
That's yeah, like that's I would say,
That reminded me of January 6th, just like.
yeah, like I think we see this a lot and a lot of times too, but how do I put this? I don't have the right word for it. But yeah, like you have to be miserable just like we are. Like that's and then that gets brought on fairness is not the right word. Fairness is actually a better word for, but equal, like equal time given to stuff, equal viewpoints given to things. That it's like, well, we live in this hell, you need to listen to our opinions, type of thing here, even though we end up seeing like because he ends up asking here in a couple minutes, like, well, why couldn't they just go down there? And we end up finding out at the end it's because they can't fit. They can't fit. And it's almost like the miserable ones, the gray town wants to come up and just express that rottenness to everywhere, to ruin everything. And this will be, there's a point to this, but I liken that to HOAs. Like that.
You got
Like that's like that, and I understand it's not a perfect one-to-one. But here's what I mean by that. And churches have the same problem. And this is why, like the whole Sunrise thing, with Miami, with that building collapse, like I'm very curious about what's gonna happen with all of that. Because HOAs have the same problem churches do. No one, a lot of times, we're begging for people to be involved. You know, that's a bad place because there's people that want to be in charge of things that have no business
That's
being in charge of stuff, right? And a lot of times HOAs and churches can fall into that. And we just kind of do things in order to, it's like, oh, we're filling this position because we got to fill it. You know? And that's I guarantee that's it was Sunrise, Seaside. Yeah.
We know who you are.
Yeah. The Seaside, like I guarantee that's what happened. To there just years of like, oh well, pass the buck a little bit.
So they said they had, for the last couple of years, they had something like 5 presidents, each one resigning
Yeah,
after
like
a year or
it
so.
got
Yeah,
bad.
and you have a whole building full of people who don't want to pay any money,
Mhm.
you know. But
Yeah, so that's,
it's a complicated thing.
and that's a complicated thing, but that idea of there are some people that just want to, or they get involved in leadership because they I don't know, they just want to pave over the heavenly realms, you know, and that's hard to know, but I think we see that in a lot of places. That's
Make me think of ambulance chasers.
ambulance, yeah, ambulance chasers, people that take an opportunity in other people's misery, you know, like payday loan places,
Yeah.
Mm.
you know, like that's, if we can, that's one of my measures of like a good of a government that's working better, is if the payday loan places decrease or increase. So if they're increasing, then I view that as a metric of a government not caring about the people.
And the people not caring.
Yeah,
Those that aren't in that business.
well, government
not
is
caring.
people, yeah. And so, but yeah, I think payday loan places are a perfect example. I mean, it's just straight up predatory, you know, and just holding people down. And all right, here we're almost done with this chapter. So let's see. I got so much still. The bottom of 81, I'll start in that paragraph. But beyond all these, I saw other grotesque phantoms, which hardly a trace of human form remained. Monsters who had faced the journey to the bus stop. Perhaps for them, it was thousands of miles to come up to the country of the shadow of life, and limped far into it over the turning grass, only to spit and gibber out in one ecstasy of hatred their envy and, what is harder to understand, their contempt of joy. Like that's, again, we go back to HOAs, but that contempt of joy, like there's just no way that you can be happy, and you're just angry at anyone else that is feeling it. It's like, oh my goodness, because that can be I know that contempt of joy for me happens in jealousy, you know? That something as good is happening to someone else, and I feel like it should happen to me,
Right.
you know? And just I have contempt for their joy. And that's a big thing. And so just down a little bit, how do they come to be here at all? I asked my teacher. I've seen that kind converted, he says. Again, I'm back to hope. I've seen that kind converted when those you would think less deeply damned have gone back. Those that hate goodness are sometimes nearer than those that know nothing at all about it. And I think they have it all. That right there, I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts about that? Those who hate goodness are sometimes nearer than those who know nothing about it. You have any thoughts about that?
Sometimes it's
I would
because
rather
they
not
want
have
it
any
so badly.
Yeah.
But they don't think they can have it. Or it's something like that, it's like, they really do, but since they don't see it happening for them, they're going to hate for having it.
Yeah. I think some of that is connected to the lukewarm statements that are made, like in Revelation, where that one church Laodicea is lukewarm and all of that. I think it's connected to that, where it's like, I know nothing about the goodness, but like the hot and cold can be at least harnessed in there. I don't know. It's a difficult thing, because I think a lot of times we think that it's a linear thing. It's like, oh, this person's all bad, and they go, and this is all good, and like this person's closer, and it's just this book just makes you turn everything that you understand on your head. Let's see, and then we go into this guy's the painter. We should probably it's 12:03 right now. We should. I thought we were done. What do you want to finish the chapter, or do you want to? What do you guys want to do? You want to stick around for another 10 minutes?
I don't mind.
All right. Let's stick around for a minute. I try to honor the 12 o'clock thing. So we'll continue going. So
It's raining.
it is raining outside. It is raining.
I'm gonna write a book as long as my bladder holds.
Yeah. That's as long as that's funny. Let's see here. All right, so then we start talking about this pain. So we're talking about, I've seen these people and how they can be converted, and this painting one really speaks to me too, because it's talking about what it means for this guy to paint. And he says that when you first started to paint, you were catching a glimpse of heaven. And then you're catching a glimpse of heaven and you're sharing that with everyone else. Like that's unbelievable words right there. And and I think when I try to talk about people's occupations and what they're doing, I try to give that sense that he just said right there in like a sentence, where when he paints, he's getting a glimpse of heaven and he's showing that. But even though that glimpse of heaven, it became about the painting itself. Yeah, it just became about the painting. Let's see, before we even get to that, it says, look here, isn't one going to be allowed to go on painting? And he says, looking comes first. And that's when he explains that you used to see a glimpse of heaven. And he's accusing the guy that he's not looking anymore. And we've talked about it already in this class, but the idea of being present where you are, I think is important in the kingdom of heaven. That you're not living for tomorrow, that you're living in today. And that means, the guy that's fishing out shrimp for you at the seafood counter at Publix. That person matters, and having like a human interaction matters. And that's kind of how I equate with this guy is doing the painting. Let's see.
And can you imagine all the, when someone talked about going to see Michelangelo
Yeah,
on the ceiling of the church, are they going to see the painting or are they going to the church?
yeah.
And do
Yeah.
they care about what paints went into that?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, yes, he was an artist and it was brilliant and beautiful, but there's a whole lot of appreciation things there.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things. Done a few sermons on Van Gogh things. I should find a reproduction of this because it's not very famous though. But Van Gogh's Lazarus painting, that he painted that when he was in the midst of all of his emotional turmoil, and it's a recreation of a Rembrandt Lazarus painting. It's a recreation of that, but he gave Lazarus red hair, and his ear is messed up. So it's like Van Gogh puts himself in Lazarus position, and like you're seeing, like Van Gogh is seeing something there, that you're just not going to, like, he had a desire to put himself as Lazarus risen up. Like that's seeing something that's just not there. It's in, like, the glimpse of heaven. Quote this. I don't know. I love that. I should spend money and frame it. But I'm just going to have to read some of this. I don't know what to say when you've grown into a person. It's all right. We all have to do it. There'll be some things which you'll see better than anyone else. One of the things you'll want to do will be to tell us all about, but not yet. At present, your business is to see. Come and see. He is endless. Come and feed. Interesting that all of a sudden feed and see is like used interchangeably. Like love it. And the ghost was like delightful with a delightful, like a dull voice. Come then, said the spirit, offering its arm. How soon do you think I could begin painting? The spirit broke into laughter again. Laughter, like these guys are so quick to laugh. It's important. Don't you see? You'll never paint at all if that's what you're thinking of. Like he wants him to see. He wants him to see, and it goes back to like, why are you doing all this stuff? Like stop and look. Don't paint for the painting's sake. And then so we get into this dangerous stimulus, and this paragraph begins with, "One does indeed. I also have to recover from that. It was all a snare, ink and cat, whatever that is. Paint, catgut, all right, and paint were necessary down, but they all are dangerous stimulants. Every poet, musician, artist, but for grace is drawn away from the love of the thing he tells to the love of telling, till down in deep hell. They cannot be interested in God at all, but only in what they say about him. For it doesn't stop at being interested in paint, They sink lower, become interested in their own personalities, and then in nothing but their own reputations." Like, that's unreal. That's like, I don't know, just seeking, like being a grandmother, but not interested in your kids and your grandkids, like that's, like that, it's stuff like that.
But then he says, I don't think I'm much trouble in that way. And then he turns around and says, so when can I paint it?
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't paint?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's all he wants to do, and really all he wants to do is go back and and paint down. And then he starts talking about famous people. And this is like the last page, yep. And this also really hit me. Let me see, about halfway down the page on 86. Well, of course not. And I've only been here a few years. All the chances are against my having run across them. There are a good many of us, but surely in the case of distinguished people yet here, but they aren't distinguished, no more than anyone else. Don't you understand? The glory flows into everyone and back from everyone, like light in mirrors, but the light is the thing. Do you mean there are no famous men? Well, they're all famous. They are all known, remember, recognized by the only mind that can give perfect judgment. Like that's like this, it's so different than what so many of our goals are here. It's so different.
True equality.
Yeah, like it's that sense of like we're all here, one must be content with one's reputation among prosperity, then said the ghost. My friend, said the spirit, don't you know what? That you and I are already completely forgotten on earth. It's like, what? You mean those people won? Lord love you, yes, said the spirit. Once more shaking and shining with laughter. Again, it goes back to laughter. You couldn't get 5 pounds for any picture of mine or even yours in Europe or America today. We're dead out of fashion. Oh no. And that's the thing where he's like, well, we got to go protest this.
Gotta fix that.
We got to fix that. And then he vanished. Like, what do you think that's going on? And that's like, without, very last sentences, and without listening to the spirit's reply, the specter vanished.
He didn't even go into buses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in that moment, like he lost
Yeah.
all humanity.
Yeah, boom.
Like
I'm where I
that's
need to be. Give me a pen.
yeah. That's wild. That's wild. But yeah, that's this chapter's amazing and how powerful. I know we went slow through it.
No, but this chapter deserves it.
Yeah. And so it's like that idea of not being famous is hard. It is hard because we all want like our little 10 minutes of fame, right? It's especially me, like I need to be the best pastor ever, be known throughout.
The best sermon.
Oh yeah, the best sermons. Yeah, and am I doing sermons just for becoming famous? Or trying to give life to people. Like that's hard. It's hard. But well, we finished chapter 9, Coley.
Yes, for the record of your friends that watch this later, I was going back and forth dealing with the air conditioner man. Sorry about that.
Do you have cold air now?
Yes, so the repairman did not know of all the steps Chris was taking to make the house comfortable. And so he spent probably an extra hour fretting over what he thought was a problem because the house wasn't dumping humidity into his pipe test.
I've been running the dehumidifier.
And well, he never came in the house to inspect what was going on. And he had no idea we had a window unit going. So he couldn't figure out why it wasn't 90 degrees in here. And I don't know. But then the icing on the
Who
cake,
are these people?
the icing on the cake was when he stuck around a few extra minutes after I'd paid to make sure the unit was going to stay on. And then it didn't. And he worried he did a bad job. But that's because it reached noon and our unit kicks off at noon because the power gets more expensive. So, Chris, you're probably going to have a note in your record. Difficult customer does things too well.
That's too bad. Like, the guy's nice. Like, I've seen him before. We've been using this kind of company. It's who installed it at the house. And they're pretty good.
So the next time they show up, you just gotta go out and talk to them.
Well, I canceled. I normally do a yearly inspection and maintenance on the machine.
Yeah,
And I didn't because of COVID, and then it breaks. So, because they give you a discount if they don't catch anything.
I usually go every 6 to 9 months, especially like right before.
Yeah. And so,
We go once a year.
yeah, and so like that's, so I kind of wish I hadn't, or it rescheduled it, but I just forgot.
Yeah.
But there it is. That's funny though, that he was fretting and it's turning off. Because yeah, I have, our house runs as efficiently as it can, to Coley's detriment.
No, it's fine. And then when you guys said it was raining there, it wasn't raining here. But then all of a sudden I heard it starting to rain and realized that I had inflated the big water slide outside and needed to bring in the fan. I was trying to dry it out from having the little kids play on it yesterday,
Right.
and I had to bring in the fan. So now I have to start over with that because it's raining.
Yeah, we had little girls, we had Mark and Amy's
That's the way it hurt.
kids at the house. So, but good deal. Well, here, I'll say a blessing, Jesus. We thank you that you love us so much. Lord, continue to humble us, that we can continue to be curious about the creation and the creator himself. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay.
amen.
Excellent. Well, thank
And I
you.
go back
Thanks.
to work tomorrow. So